It's lovely afternoon in the latter half of February. Penrhyn in Cornwall. Robins singing away. Just been thinking about kind of how large the rewilding sites need to be. Kind of depends really. If you're undertaking kind of passive rewilding in a kind of a typical lowland farm landscape, then they could be relatively small, a few tens of hectares, a few hundreds of hectares. Whereas if you're aiming to undertake kind of trophic rewilding, then they need to be quite a bit larger, I would suggest. What do I mean by trophic rewilding? Well, roughly I just mean where you're aiming to kind of reassemble all the kind of trophic levels, so kind of your top predators and the larger prey items. A lot of those top predators depend on. If you're aiming to do that, then your rewilding sites really need to be large enough to support kind of viable populations of those most area demanding species, and the larger kind of apex predators and mega herbivores tend to be the more area demanding species, so they need larger sites. And just thinking back to Bill Newmark's studies of North American national parks from probably the 80s, where he kind of suggested some species were going extinct due to area effects, even in the largest hundreds of thousands of hectare national parks. Kind of suggests that if you've got genuinely area demanding species that you want in your rewilding site, because you're undertaking trophic rewilding, then you'll probably need hundreds of thousands of hectares of space to support those kinds of species in the long term. So to achieve trophic rewilding, it seems to me we need very large sites. I'm here in the UK. We don't really have many of those kind of area demanding species at the moment. We could in the future, but we will need big sites. You might be able to kind of undertake some interventions, some kind of meta-population management of the largest species if they are in smaller sites. So for instance, in Java, the Asian Wild Cattle Specialist Group is using the one plan approach to kind of plan the management of the banteng population, their kind of wild cattle species. Each national park in Java being too small to support on its own a viable population of banteng. Therefore the kind of one plan approach, the kind of active meta population management approaches, or would be to shift banteng between national parks just to maintain viable sort of meta populations. So you could do that in the UK if your rewilding sites are too small to support viable populations of larger species in the long term. Then you might want to kind of transfer individual animals between rewilding sites. Hopefully you don't need to do that, but I think realistically you will in the UK, maybe in some very large rewilding sites in Europe. 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 hectare sites. You wouldn't need to do that kind of intervention, but in mainland Europe, for species like European bison, they can't really maintain viable populations in a 200 or 300 hectare rewilding site, or a 2,000 or 3,000 hectare rewilding site possibly. So yeah, how large does your rewilding site need to be? Kind of depends on whether you're practicing trophic rewilding, trying to rebuild those viable populations at all trophic levels, or smaller scale kind of passive rewilding where you're not so concerned about the absence of some of those larger species. Anyway, that's a fairly incoherent thought. do comment, like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll post some more kind of rewilding thoughts like this going forward.